Great. Um, so, I was born and raised in Santa Cruz, and here's a picture of me with my dad at the boardwalk carousel, and when I was just under 1 year old. And this is me with my parents when I'm celebrating my first birthday. And I think fundamentally, I have to thank my parents for being able to do something like run for county supervisor, because it's thanks to them that I have an incredible base of love and support, and the confidence to do something crazy like this, where I get beat up all the time, with a lot of feedback constantly, let's just say. And so it helps to have sort of a rock solid center, and I have my parents to thank for that. So I grew up here in Santa Cruz between my parents' home in Corralitos and my grandfather's home on 25th Avenue. And so really have experienced both the uh, Santa Cruz Mountains lifestyle, as well as what it's like to live right here in the middle of town and in the middle of Live Oak. And let's see. So, one question people ask me a lot is, where's your name come from? Is Manu your first name, your last name? Manu is my first name, and it means bird in Tahitian. My mom's family is from Tahiti, and I grew up getting to visit relatives in the islands. And the reason this is important is really it's behind a lot of the motivation that I have to be involved in the public sphere and to ultimately run for office. And the reason for that is over the years, I really had an opportunity to see sudden coral death firsthand. The picture on the left is what the reef looked like when I was first visiting family as a kid. And the picture on the right is what it looks like in a lot of places. Not everywhere, thank goodness, but in many places along the reef when you go to Dang. And it's pretty terrifying when even places that you thought were kind of hidden and off the beaten track of the world are showing this kind of an impact of everything that we're doing here. And it really has motivated me to get involved with public policy in order to do something about this. I went to Stanford and studied German studies and management science and engineering. And this is a picture of me in Berlin. I lived there for 9 months, right at the end of my college career. And I actually interned with Deutsche Bahn, which is the German rail system. I love public transit. Germany's got some of the best public transit in the world, particularly Berlin, and so it was exciting to get to work with that company. And I love trains, and when I moved back to California, I actually voted for high-speed rail, and was excited about the idea of getting public train system here in our county. And when I moved back to California, I lived in San Francisco. And, as I said, I studied management science and engineering, sort of an entrepreneurship major at Stanford. And so, I went and worked in a high-tech company in San Francisco, naturally enough. And the startup I worked for was in online advertising. And I realized pretty quickly doing that not every startup is changing the world for the better, that I was really going to have to be more focused and directed in my career if I was going to actually tie it back to something that was going to save the reef and make an impact for all of us. And I show you this picture here of the San Francisco Marathon, because I ran the San Francisco Marathon a couple times. And I felt that it was a good metaphor for sort of running the rat race as well in San Francisco. And ultimately, I wanted to get out of that. So I moved home to Santa Cruz and started a company called Civinomics, where the goal was to allow people to propose new policy and vote online. If you had asked me 10 years ago when I started this company, politician would have been on the bottom of my list of desired career roles. because I felt, well, there's no way to get anything done if you're in the middle of the political mess. And I'm going to try and change the system from the outside. And so that was the idea behind creating an online voting site, is to do just that. And this is a picture at Cruise.io Works downtown, where our office was based. Chris Nicholson and Peggy Dolgenos, who started Cruise.io, were some of our early angel investors, and helped code the website, and were just incredible partners in that project. We had really grand plans with the website. You can see here, the idea being you could have state policy, federal policy, county policy. So you can imagine my surprise when the most popular issue on the website ended up being the off-leash dog program. This I think, had the most votes of anything ever on the website. It was over in the 3,000 range. And ultimately, we saw with this, I mean, if you live in Live Oak today, you know that we're still struggling with this issue. And that was really what we ran up against, is that we could have all the good ideas in the world on the website. We could have all sorts of people participating. But unless our local leadership and elected officials were willing to do something with that information and do something with that public opinion, they wouldn't go anywhere. And of course, that's where we still are today with issues like the off-leash dog program. Nothing has changed about this, and we still really haven't found any reconciliation on it. This is just a good times cover we had for the company. I ended up working a lot directly with the cities here in the county and the county itself, doing polling and survey research. This is a photo of me down in the Watsonville Plaza. iPads had just come out, and so we were using that to try to get more public opinion into the process faster. But really what we saw is, even in cases where our local agencies were paying us good money to collect the public opinion, oftentimes they wouldn't do anything with it. I really talked to a lot of people. This is a picture of me in San Francisco. We worked with the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission up there. And at the time, I have to say, it was, I love doing the outreach work, but part of me also was wondering, it wasn't what I was expecting to do with my career, and I was a little surprised. Little did I know it was really preparing me to do some of the core political work later on. And, as much as I like doing the work with government agencies, my heart was still in trying to advance good policy initiatives and speed up that process. And so this is a picture of me volunteering with Save Our Shores. We collected opinion from folks in Scotts Valley on whether or not they wanted a local bag ban there. And our survey demonstrated that people did. I also worked to advocate for ranked choice voting, which is where you get to rank just your first, second, and third choice on the ballot. And this is a key initiative that would really allow third parties in our politics. And it's also been demonstrated to reduce negative campaigning. It's demonstrated to have more representation from women and minorities, and really great policy that we were trying to implement here in Santa Cruz. But at the time, it was also a little bit too, a lot of attention got switched to rent control. This was back in 2017-18 time period. And so it really wasn't a good timing within the city of Santa Cruz itself. And so my advocacy effort then shifted towards the rail corridor. And if you know anything about this issue, you know the abandoned freight line runs through the middle of our county. We've been talking about building this rail trail for over 10 years, right? It was purchased in 2000. I started the purchase in 2010 and ultimately went through by 2012. So 8 years. And the current plan, if you will, is this at the top, where there would be a train with a trail next to the tracks. And I guess the way I first got into it was realizing, hey, nothing's happening. as I said, when I first moved back to Santa Cruz County, I was excited by the idea we'd have better public transit. And 5 years later, still the corridor is abandoned. And so I started looking into this and realized, well, we don't have money for the train. You don't really have space to fit both uses effectively. And it's just not happening. So I became a big advocate for the Greenway plan, which would be, forget the train portion. Let's build what we can afford. Let's build a bike and pedestrian trail throughout our county that will give us enough space to separate bikes from pedestrians and accommodate both of those uses much better. We have the money to do that today. I ultimately collected, it's not going to play, but this is a video of the large stack of signatures that I helped to collect. Over 10,000 throughout the county, nearly 3,000 right here in the first district, of people saying that they wanted the Greenway plan for a trail and not a train. And ultimately what we came up against there was our incumbent supervisor, John Leopold. As you can see, he's been a very vocal train advocate for his entire time in office. And he pretty much ignored the signatures that we presented. And even when the rail operator that we had, and that you can see in the back of this picture, Iowa Pacific, said they couldn't make a good business in Santa Cruz and were pulling out, he really led the effort to get the next rail operator in line to come in. That was Progressive Rail, and to sign a contract for the entire rail corridor, kind of locking it up and preventing us from doing that switch to building the trail faster to rail banking. And the result of that today is that, guess what? Progressive Rail has pulled out as well. So, he's directly responsible for wasting another 2 years of taxpayer money and our time when we could have been making a lot more progress on building the trail. Instead, we've still got an abandoned rail corridor. After the John and others elected officials ignored our signature gathering effort, we decided to take this directly to the voters with a ballot initiative in the city of Capitola. And all of the trestles along the corridor are sort of at the heart of this issue, because you can really only have one or the other kind of use there, a train or a trail. And in Capitola, in fact, the current plan with the rail trail is that, well, the train would go over the trestle and bikes and pedestrians would have to go through the village. And if you live in this county, I'm sure you've been through Capitola Village, you know that there's not a lot of extra space on those streets, and it's not a safe environment for people to have a lot of bikers. In fact, it's a no skateboarding zone, precisely because there's 2 steep hills on Monterey Avenue and Cliff Drive, and someone was actually killed as a skateboarder came flying down one of those hills. So the idea of radically increasing those kind of uses through the village just doesn't make any sense, and that's why we ran a ballot initiative to say that the Capitola trestle should just be used for bikes and pedestrians. We won that initiative in November of 2018. And this is me with some of the other supporters of the Measure L campaign. But ultimately, while that caused one city council member in Capitola to switch, we're still stuck in studies. In fact, today, we are still studying the best use of the rail corridor. And so that really made me realize that I would need to run and actually become a representative myself if we were going to make any substantive progress on this issue. Now, a lot of people say, well, okay, you're a one-issue candidate. This is all you care about is the rail corridor. And that's simply not true. I would say it was the gateway issue for me. It was one where I realized just how slow-moving our county is and how often inconsiderate of public opinion. I'll give you another example, which is the Nissan dealership that our current supervisor approved for 41st Avenue in SoCal. The big corner there where King Paint used to be, and it's currently vacant. This was in October of 2019, so just last year. Yeah, a Nissan dealership was proposed that was in direct contrast to the sustainable Santa Cruz plan that was put together by many citizens. There was hundreds of hours of staff time and public input that went into that plan, and it called for more of a mixed use activity center at that corner, more of a kind of local village feel, and instead Supervisor Leopold voted with a few other members of the Board of Supervisors to downzone that spot to allow the Nissan dealership to go in. I spoke against it, joining with Lisa Sheridan, who you see in this picture here, to oppose the idea of allowing a Nissan dealership to go in there when the community wanted a mixed-use center. And again, today, it was just about a month ago, we actually heard that Nissan has canceled their plans for a dealership there and is pulling out. So again, our community has wasted hundreds of hours of staff time. There was a lawsuit in there. And so we've wasted hundreds of thousands, if not over $1 million on this, and still gotten nowhere. Again, Supervisor Leopold was on voted in the wrong way on this project. I'll give you just one more example of, how out of touch our county often is with public opinion. And, this is in the area of fire danger. There's a whole bunch of new grand jury reports, civil grand jury reports that came out just in June and July of this year. And they are on a range of issues, from homelessness to the website in the county and other data services. And there's one on fire that came out in July that really warned that our county is very unprepared to meet fire danger. As you can see here, these are direct findings from the civil grand jury report that fire has not received the attention or funding needed from the County Board of Supervisors, and that we're not adhering to California government executive order, that we lack risk management for wildfire, and essentially that we're uninformed of PG&E hotspots and danger zones, and so we're uninformed as to how to manage our responsibilities as a county to dealing with those locations. So again, on just about every issue you can think of, including some of the most pressing issues we're facing today, our county has largely failed us and has failed to listen to public opinion. I will just tell you 3 more things about myself that you should know, and then we'll open it up to your questions and comments and concerns. First, just to my qualifications for taking on this role. This is a picture of me with the Digital Nest Board. I served on the Digital Nest Board from 2014 to 16. Digital Nest is a tech education nonprofit. And I've served on a number of boards. I served on the board for my own company and startup, Civinomics, which I already mentioned. I served on the Greenway board, and I've served on the Downtown Commission in the city of Santa Cruz, which manages all the parking downtown. So, of course, having that experience with parking and knowing that the city makes over $1 million a year on parking, I find it pretty ridiculous that the county actually loses $80,000 a year on our parking program here in Live Oak. Let's see. And next thing you should know about me, I'm really love being in the environment. I'm an active surfer, mountain biker, and I think that both of those activities really help me to connect with our local environment and just be out in and understand, why it is that we all appreciate living here. And finally, I just have to mention my wonderful partner. I couldn't do this alone, literally. My fiance, Leah, and I, we were engaged over a year ago now, but it's sort of hard to plan a wedding in these times. besides being a wonderful partner, Leah is also part of the Medical Reserve Corps, currently studying to be a nurse practitioner to get her master's in nursing. And is a great partner for bouncing stuff off of when it comes to health policy in our county. So she's a great teammate. So that's all I'll share for now. And I want to hear from you guys what issues matter most to you, what questions you have, and what you want to know.
So Manu, we did get a couple of questions as you were talking, so I'm going to go to those first.
Yeah, sure.
And let me go and read. So this first question came in from Robert. Robert was just letting us know that today the county supervisors passed an updated vacation rental ordinance. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. I know you had a busy day. So he was wondering if you are in support of the ordinance. I'm not sure if you're fully aware of what the new ordinance is.
Do you want to unmute Robert and maybe just let him talk? Is it Robert M there?
Yeah, he did ask me to ask on his behalf.
Okay.
And so there are new limits on the total number of vacation rentals in specific areas. Mm-hmm. What does Mr. Koenig think about this? That is his question.
Yeah. Well, vacation rentals are definitely an area where we have to find balance. So on the one hand, they can really erode neighborhoods, and people find that there's no more kids trick-or-treating anymore because a lot of those homes have become vacation rentals and long-term residents have moved away. I really noticed it while I was actually out for this campaign and meeting voters in the coastal area. I would go around with the voter rolls and realize that half the homes were empty because they were either second homes or vacation rentals. So I do think that it's important to preserve neighborhood character, and that in certain more residential areas, it's important to preserve local housing. And then, on the other side, we should consider that vacation rentals actually are one of the best and most direct ways that the county can earn revenue, which of course we are very much hurting for right now. And the reason for that is because all of the transit occupancy tax that is generated from them goes directly to our county budget, as opposed to property taxes where only 13% for every dollar you pay in property taxes actually goes to the county. So, there are, for example, in places like Aptos, maybe we should actually be more permissive of some vacation rentals, since those have always sort of been second home communities or, more vacation rental oriented communities. So I don't think that it's a one size fits all for every part of our county. It's definitely a balance.
All right. Thank you for that. We also had a question come in from Electra. It's more of an inquiry. She's wondering, can you talk a little bit more about the influence and impact you could make as a supervisor, not just on the district, but the county and city?
Yeah, great question, Electra. A lot of people don't even know what a supervisor does. And I think the easiest way to explain it is that it's like taking the president and Congress and combining them and then dividing it into five people. So that's to say that the supervisors collectively have executive power. They get to vote on pretty much every budget item, everything that the county spends money on. And so, of course, that's a major way to control, what it is we're doing or not doing. And then they also make laws for the county. They make laws that, many of those are proposed by staff, or they could be proposed by citizens. And, it'd be a supervisor's job to draft a new ordinance and propose it to the other supervisors. And if it passed by a 3 out of 5 vote, then it would become law. And a final way that supervisors can act and make laws is by putting issues directly to voters. So 3 out of 5 supervisors can put an initiative on the ballot. So it is a very big job, and while each supervisor has a district, right, and the first district here, which I'm running for, is really right in the middle of the county, but and sort of as the head of, or as a supervisor for that district, of course, constituents would ask me questions, or talk about specific neighborhood issues that they needed dealt with. But ultimately, those budget items and new ordinances would affect the entire county. And I can give you just an example right now of something that's, of course, really important, is the rebuilding process for people affected by the CZU complex fire. It's the incredible amount of devastation that we've experienced. I mean, nearly 1,000 homes and counting destroyed. And pretty much all of those, in fact, I think all of them are in the unincorporated part of the county. And so they're all going to have to go through our county planning department. And so it's going to be collectively all 5 supervisors that are responsible for improving and expediting the process for people to rebuild and get through our planning department in an efficient manner. And that's certainly something I'm committed to doing.
All right, thank you. So some people are asking me how to raise your hand. So what I want you guys to know is that if you go down to the bottom of your screen, it'll say reactions. There's a little like smiley face with a plus. If you click on that, it'll give you a thumbs up or a hand. I'm gonna just click on my hand right now, and you can see here on the screen that a little hand popped up in the corner. So that is how you raise your hand. And then but you can just ask questions in the chat and I will filter them through. So I'm just gonna go as they come in. We had one from Wayne. Let me go back to Wayne's question. He would like to know, what about improving the roads in the mountains, the Loma Prieta area? We'd like to know your ideas about that.
Great question, Wayne. Yeah, the roads are really bad. I mentioned my parents live out in Corralitos. I was just out to see them this weekend. I think I almost destroyed my car about 5 or 6 times. I was dodging potholes left and right. Yeah, our roads are literally failing, right? I mean, the overall grade for our roads is an F. The pavement index is a 48. So we clearly have to do more to prioritize spending on roads. I know that, again, having grown up in the mountains, it's pretty much the roads are the #1 piece of infrastructure we rely on from the county. Today, we only spend $1.3 million a year of our core general fund budget on resurfacing, which seems absurdly low to me. I mean, in fact, we spend more on restriping. So a lot of the time you'll have a pothole with just a new stripe over it. It makes no sense. So there's a couple things here. First off, I think we really need to make sure we spend more of our core budget on roads, because that's the infrastructure that matters to people the most. It also gets matched in many cases by the state and federal government. So an extra $1 that we spend on roads locally could become $3 in some cases. And then, I think generally speaking as well, we need to start thinking about ways just to leverage more resources within our community. And, here I think to some of the most successful private enterprises in the world today. The largest hotel company in the world doesn't own a single hotel room. That's Airbnb. And the largest cab company in the world doesn't own a single car. It's Uber. And so as a county, we need to start looking at ways that we can put resources and together to meet the problem. And so when it comes to roads, I've talked to several people who said, let me just fix the road myself. I'll get the tar. I'll fill the hole. Like me and my friends have plenty of time. I'm tired of waiting for the county for 6 months, 2 years, 5 years to come out and do this. And so I say those groups have largely been shut down by the county today. They've been told to stop. I would take the opposite approach and say, absolutely, you tell me where the hole is and what you're fixing. I'll reimburse your receipts right away. We'll give you a quick course on how to do this correctly so that we can put you on county insurance so that you're safe out there. And then let's find some way to make sure you're properly incentivized to keep doing this, whether it's some kind of break on your property tax bill or other incentives to reward you for that. So those are, generally speaking, the kind of programs that I'm going to look to create in order to meet the huge need we have on county roads, because we shouldn't have to be paying an extra $1,000 in car maintenance every year because our roads are in such crummy shape.
All right, Mark sent us a message. He wanted to ask you some follow-up questions to that. So Mark has unmuted himself. So Mark, go right ahead.
Okay, so it's related to roads. I mean, it comes back to up in the mountains, our first priority is safety. Part of that is roads, part of that's fire safety. And what we constantly see is that all of our parcel taxes, all of our sales taxes go to urban features, whether it be support of like the sheriff, which we never see up here and don't really need up here, or bike paths or railways, which we don't really have the density to justify. And unless some funds come out of the general funds, our pavement index is just going to keep getting worse. And yes, we do maintain our own roads up here, but when it comes to repaving, that's $100,000 to probably $500,000 a mile.
Yeah.
How do we fix the real fiscal issues around just getting basic safe roads, clear roads for fire and evacuation routes?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, this issue really does touch on fire as well, and it's a basic safety issue, and all of us need to be able to evacuate fast and know that we have dependable roads in order to do that. And today the county's not being a good partner. In fact, Steve Mandel, who's on the call, explained to me how his road association was trying to create a basic evacuation route, and by connecting to a road that was about I don't know if I've got this exactly right, 100 to 100 yard gap there. They sought to connect that evacuation or create that evacuation route, and the county put up a bunch of barriers and stopped them. So yeah, I fully intend to work with all the fire districts in the county to make sure that those evacuation routes are actually being created or updated. And also, right now we don't require that roads be maintained for fire safety. They have to be passable, but not necessarily by a fire engine, and we certainly don't maintain the brush along county right-of-way, so there's a lot of excessive fuel there. So I would definitely look to require that the county do that. I think you asked about solutions, and you mentioned two of them. I mean, we do just need to spend more of our primary funds on maintaining the infrastructure that we have. And, I think there's a reason that county supervisors were originally called road supervisors. It was because it was their number one job was to look after the roads. And so we do need to get back to that. And the second piece is, how do we get more hands on deck? I talked about volunteers in general. I talked to a gentleman today who works in clearing fire breaks and doing brush work throughout the Santa Cruz Mountains. And he said to me, you know what I need? I just need, I need a bobcat, I need a wood chipper, and I need 11 guys who are recovering from homelessness, who I can show the value of good, hard work, and can get out here with me to help clear brush. So I think that, as we look to solve some of the problems in town, right, solve the issue of homelessness, job programs are one of the things that works best for people who are trying to recover from an addiction, because it builds self-confidence and it builds a sense of self-worth. And so I think that that people who are recovering from homelessness are actually a resource for our county. We need resources in the mountains, on the roads, and clearing fire brush. So I intend to create more job programs there.
So kind of related to that, and I guess going into Karina's question is, those are some good ideas, but still there's going to be the hard decisions of what to stop funding so that you can free up funds.
Mm-hmm.
And you would only be just 1 out of 5 supervisors. So how do you get past the other 4?
Well, I'll tell you, the good news is that the way the districts are chopped up, every supervisor, well, maybe with the exception of District 4, which is, although I'd have to double check, but pretty much every supervisor has some mountainous area. And so there's going to be, every one of them will have constituents who care about this. So yeah, it'll definitely take some work. Politics is about compromise, but I think we can certainly do a lot better than we are today.
Thanks.
Sure, my pleasure.
All right, Madison rose her hand a little bit ago, so I'm going to let her go ahead and ask her question.
Cool,
Hey,
thank
Maddie.
My question is about, this is actually a good transition because we're talking about houselessness. My question is about the one-to-one, your decision to support a one-to-one needle exchange program.
Mm-hmm.
So my understanding of the data that exists now is, particularly there was one study in 2007 that surveyed 24 syringe exchange programs in cities across California. It actually showed that there wasn't the greater syringe access didn't increase unsafe syringe disposal, which I think is probably intuitively what a lot of people assume those one-to-one exchanges do. Yeah, so I'm curious about your decision to support a one-to-one exchange program as opposed to other exchange programs with the data that exists now.
Yeah, that's a great question, Maddie. I know there's this question kind of just came to my attention recently because, of course, there's a lot of volunteers that want to work in our community, helping people who use drugs and distributing syringes so that disease does not spread within those groups. And certainly, the county exchange today is really falling short. Right, it's open 12 hours a week, right, and so someone who is using drugs in the camp is not going to get up and go, even if they did want to go get a clean needle, it could be really hard for them to do that if the county exchange closes at 1. So, my rationale behind supporting a one-to-one exchange was that, we need to be providing people more than just needles. We ultimately, the goal is for them to help them overcome addiction, deal with other infectious diseases that they could be experiencing, test them for infectious disease, and so all of those additional services are things that only a licensed health professional can provide, and so, the reason I support a one-to-one is because it ensures that we get that contact, and it also puts some value on a needle so that people are less inclined to throw them out. There's still a worth to it there. I do hear both sides of the argument, and that there's definitely science that says that if you really want to reduce infectious disease, you have to just have an as-needs service. I also would say this. I think that wherever our community ends up on this, it's the amount of needles we're giving out is not the core issue. It's whether or not we create places for people who are addicted to drugs to overcome that addiction and to create a life that they feel good about. You know, a lot of these people are dealing with trauma, and you know, there's a reason that housing first policies have worked well throughout the country. I think that focusing on that rather than this disagreement about how many needles should we be providing is what's going to really really create a difference in our community for everyone. And so I intend to, you know, create more, put more tiny homes around Emmeline, more pallet shelters, and first and foremost focus on just creating a place where people feel safe and feel like they can be. And then let's look at addressing addiction from there.
All right. Madison, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. So, well, my understanding is that you don't view the needle exchange as like the end all be all of helping people with addiction, which I think is a valid point. But I think also maybe I'll email you some of these studies too, because they're pretty riveting as far as like the assumptions that we make about how these programs impact unsafe syringe disposal in communities. And it's actually, I mean, there's pretty much undeniably a correlation that we wouldn't necessarily expect.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I would love to see the studies, and you know, ultimately, you know, as I said, I do think we need volunteers. And we need volunteers working with the county, and we need programs to communicate with each other. And so, I'm definitely we'll work on making sure we have that good communication.
Cool. Thanks for taking my question.
Sure.
All right. Lou wrote in a couple of questions, and I'm going to start with his first one. He would like to know, what party are you affiliated with, and have you been endorsed by the Central Committee?
Great question, Lou. So I'm currently a registered Democrat. You know, to be perfectly transparent, you know, I was registered no party preference for most of my voting career because, you know, as suggested with my advocacy for ranked choice voting, I think that the solution of our political future does not lie with either party. That said, you know, having grown up in Santa Cruz, you know, generally have a more liberal leaning ideology on many things. And so, at least I'm socially liberal. And so I caucus with the Democrats frequently, and as in pursuing office, registered as a Democrat in order to participate in their endorsement process. And I've competed with, you know, talked to the North County Democrats, Central County Democrats, the Democratic Women's Club, and you know, to be honest here, what I found is that you know, they're most likely going to endorse John Leopold because he's been their candidate for the last 12 years. And what I see is just that party politics is holding us back. I think that you just have a huge investment in an institution there, and those institutions are not quick to embrace change. And you know, when you look at all of the exciting candidates that we saw in the Democratic field, you know, I think that, you know, we ended up with someone who will certainly be a good leader for the country, but maybe not as dynamic as some of the other potential candidates. And I think at least part of that is due to party politics.
I forgot to unmute myself. Okay, here we go. The second part of Lou's question: having not been an elected official, how will you make up for that shortcoming to interface with other supervisors compared to your experienced opponent?
Mm-hmm. Sure, great question. So, you know, as I said, you know, this would not be the first board that I've sat on, right? You know, I've sat on, as I said, the board for my own company, the Greenway board, board for Digital Nest, the Downtown Commission. I'm currently the chair of the Solar Committee for my HOA. So as far as the work and how boards and committees do work, I'm very familiar with them. I've also interacted quite a bit with the existing supervisors through my advocacy, particularly around the rail corridor issue. And so, you know, I think what I can bring to the Board of Supervisors that they don't have today is a certain amount of initiative. You know, the only way, other than voters proposing a new initiative, that laws are created in our county is if a supervisor does it. It's a lot easier for supervisors to do it. And I think that we need to shake up the way things are done. I mean, look at where the county is today. You know, our planning department, it's impossible to build anything in our county because it's so bad. The only people that can hold the planning department accountable are the supervisors. And so I think that, you know, yes, I know how to work on a board. I have relationships with the other supervisors and will be able to work with them. And I think what I can bring to the table is a new sense of urgency and initiative.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, and now we have a question from Jerry. Jerry, I'll read the question unless you want to ask yourself. I'll read it. Okay. All right, sorry, and I got to scroll up to find it. Just give me one moment here. Okay. Do you have a sense of the extent to which the county's budget will be impacted by COVID in the anticipated major cuts to California's budget? How could that impact your initiatives, for example, on homelessness?
Great question. I think, obviously our local budget here in the county is going to be significantly impacted. The state's budget is going to be significantly impacted, and we're going to have to find ways to do more with less. You know, everywhere you look, I mean, sales taxes are down. We're seeing a lot of empty commercial real estate. I think that you know, we're going to have to change the paradigm a little bit as we come out of this recession. So you know, you would ask specifically about how it would impact homelessness initiatives. You know, the state is actually still spending a record amount and giving a record amount to counties to address homelessness. You know, we got $10.5 million last year. Yeah, okay, it was before COVID, but we've still received quite a bit this year. I don't know what exactly the total figure is, but it is in the millions of dollars for sure. And you know, I think the issue is that right now we're largely spending that on short-term solutions. We're not investing in any long-term capacity. So you know, I think it's wonderful that we're providing people again a safe place to stay throughout the pandemic. But if that place is going away, you know, even before the pandemic is over, if we don't have enough money, then that's not a great use of resources. I mean, even around, you know, the controversy in SoCal with the transition age youth, homeless youth being housed there, you know, again, I think the motivation is right. And, you know, of course, we want to use 15 trailers from the state. But why not invest instead in a location where those trailers could be permanently? A location like the county-owned property behind the Watsonville Health Clinic, which is right off Freedom Boulevard, has access to a metro line, walking distance to Cabrillo College, and of course has health services nearby. So we are going to have to do more with less, but I think the difference is that I'll bring new perspective on how to invest that money into solutions where we're building long-term capacity. And you know, I'll just say something quickly to you know how I think this recession ends ultimately, and it goes back to all that empty commercial real estate we're seeing. You know, in many ways, I think that type of building and that type of land use is quickly coming to an end. You know, many of us are shopping online more and more. I find that even when I try to support local business and go in looking for a specific, you know, a specific part or a specific item, many times they don't have it, and I end up having to order online anyway. And so, you know, and that's from even large stores like Home Depot or something. And so I do think a lot of those kind of shopping centers are going to have to be reinvented. And that's going to take rezoning. many of it would be in accordance with the Sustainable Santa Cruz plan, allow more mixed use on those properties. We can begin to build the housing that we so desperately need in those kinds of locations. That will lead to, well, thanks to requirements from the state, that new construction be have solar power on it. That will create a lot of more renewable energy capacity in our community, better funding for public transit, and ultimately expand our tax base in the county so that we can get back to a healthier budget.
All right, we're going to move on to Tom Haid. Tom has a question he's going to ask himself.
Hi, Manu.
Hey, Tom.
Hey. So I have a couple of questions, or I guess a little feedback here. In where I live is off on Felt Street between 17th Avenue and 24th. I live right up against the railroad tracks.
Yeah.
So in my area, I know a lot of the kids here and parents, etc. Their concerns are the lack of safe bike paths for their children. A lot of the people don't allow their kids to go out on their bikes much anymore, except right in their neighborhood, because it's the traffic. There's so much traffic on the streets, and the bike lanes either fade off to nothing, or they're filled with cars. Cars are blocking those, bike paths. So it's a shame, because there's so many kids here in town that want to get around town and go out and have a good time like we used to when we were young, right? Things were wide open. Now it's really hard to get around for them. So they're concerned with that. And the other big concern for them is, they all talk about it. Why isn't this corridor here, this rail corridor, being turned into a bike path so that their kids could go back and forth through town and just pull off on any street they wanted to, but use that as a safe corridor through town rather than riding in traffic? So I get off the big question, but that's one of the things here.
Yeah, I hear. Thank you, Tom. So, I hear, your concern is just, how come our kids don't have more safe places to ride their bikes? And I agree. I would not want to take my kids out on the streets today. I try to ride whenever I can, because it lightens my mood. I feel a lot better riding a bike than sitting in traffic. But it seems like cars are always getting too close, and there's a lot of places, as you said, where the bike lanes end, and overall it doesn't feel safe out there. I mean, I even get scared riding with Leah, that she's going to get hurt. So the good news is that actually creating more protected bike lanes is absolutely the cheapest transportation infrastructure that we can build. And if you look at San Jose right now, just a couple of years ago, they built 10 miles of new protected bike lanes in 1 year for $1.5 million. And they did that by timing it with street repaving that was already planned, that was already budgeted for, and doing it with non-permanent materials like plastic bollards or rubber mats. And that really transformed large parts of San Jose very quickly. And so, one of the first things I would do as supervisor is look at where we can implement those same kind of programs here in the county. So, for example, the 41st Avenue and Portola corridor there, it's one of the primary commercial districts in the county. It generates a lot of sales tax revenue. I think we should. There's actually a Portola corridor plan that has been approved by citizens over the course of multiple input sessions to put a road diet on there. So to go from 4 lanes to 3, so with a central turn lane and 2 protected bike lanes on the side. And whether or not you agree with it, it's something we can try easily. If it doesn't work, we could always go back. But I think we should try it as soon as possible. Because it'll create more safe places for kids to ride their bikes, make it easier for people to go patronize those different businesses along that corridor, and ultimately just create a more pleasant environment throughout our county. And you also mentioned the rail corridor itself. I think one of the biggest impressions I got of how that corridor impacts people's lives, and particularly kids' lives, was talking to the principal of Shoreline Middle School, who said, I have kids who walk to Shoreline on 17th Avenue from the beach flats, and they walk along the rail corridor because it's the most direct route. They walk today, even though it's not safe. Many of them had their Chromebooks stolen. So, it's leaving it in the state it is today does have a cost on our community, and we really need to look at it, and if there's a better plan we can do going forward. I intend to put this up to a vote for the people in 2022 because I think this has been an issue for so long that really to get the finality and decision to move forward, ultimately we need everyone to vote on it.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, and we got another question in from Graham. His question is, given sea levels rising with climate change, what can the county do to protect property and infrastructure from erosion?
Good question, Graham. I'm not sure what part of if you've been following some of the debate around the local coastal program that the county has been working on, but there's a lot in there that I would say limits property owners from being able to build seawalls and prevent erosion. And so I do think we need to find a good balance so that coastal property owners can protect their property and prevent erosion themselves. A lot of those homes are worth a lot of money, and so people are going to be invested in protecting them. And I think that we can find opportunities to maintain beach access at the same time, and even create new beach access. But so at the end of the day, again, it has to be the county working with citizens rather than the top-down approach. Christina, you're on mute.
Sorry, my kids came home. I had to mute myself. Okay. Electra had a couple more questions for you, and she's going to ask them herself. So,
great.
There she goes.
Hey, hey, Manu. Thanks for taking all the questions. Really appreciate it. One thing that came up when you were talking about the county and staff is the fact that in Live Oak, we tend to have a ton of abandoned vehicles, especially where I live over on Jose Avenue in the Live Oak area. How would you propose that we address that? From what I understand, there's one person in the county that addresses abandoned vehicles, and therefore vehicles sit out in front of not just my direct neighborhood, but over where the autistic school is down the street. There's a lot of broken down RVs, etc., that just sit there with a ton of homeless trash, and it's really unfortunate and sad.
Yeah, I hear you. Those abandoned vehicles really bring down the overall feeling of the neighborhood, and make it hard for people who are trying to invest in the neighborhood and make it a nicer place. And so we absolutely need to do something about it. I first saw this walking in the Winkle Park neighborhood, where I think there was like 5 cars in a row, just jam-packed full of stuff. It's like, okay, we need to make sure that this is not allowed. I think that, of course, ultimately it comes down to better parking management. And as I mentioned, our county today, the Live Oak parking program is really limited to the coastal area. And even in that space where, we get a ton of tourists, you'd think it would be a profitable program. We're actually losing $80,000 a year because it's poorly managed. So, I think my goal ultimately is to expand the Live Oak parking program to all of Live Oak, including the Jose Avenue neighborhood where you are, because that means that these issues like this can can be addressed, and that we can remove those cars that are abandoned or have been illegally parked for too long. So there's a lot of ways we can modernize it. Just using Park Mobile, which is the app-based payment system that the city uses downtown, right, where you can pay with your smartphone, would be a great start, right? I mean, today I think many of the people who park for the beaches in Live Oak don't even realize that they're supposed to pay, and it's so poorly enforced that often we don't collect any revenue from them. So, let's start by making sure that even in the areas where this parking program really should be working, we do have a surplus, and then use that to expand parking enforcement to the rest of the Live Oak area. And that way we can address the abandoned vehicles you're seeing, because that space is valuable, and it should be a positive for the neighborhood, not a negative.
Yeah, thanks for that. Just a follow-on question that you alluded when we talked about the lack of resources in the county, and the influence that, I've talked about this with you before as far as your influence with the overall district and county and city in general. But when we talk about the permitting process, I'm curious how you would address from a resource perspective. I myself work in the renewable energy space, and I'm trying to do something pretty awesome to my own house that my company's trying to test some pretty radical equipment on, and because it's out of scope, there's one person that addresses it, and so it's going to take months to actually get done. And how do we address the fact that we have such limited resources and so many limitations to what we allow, and so much bureaucracy into how we get things done? How are we going to address that situation, since that's kind of out of our jurisdiction, although I know you have power over some of the different districts?
Right, it's a great question, and I mean that's definitely within the job description and wheelhouse of the supervisor, is to make sure that the county planning department is working for people, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you, the electorate, are at the top of the org chart, then supervisors, then all of county staff. So it's as your next supervisor, it's my job to make sure staff is working for you. Now, today, we've kind of let them run amok, and I think part of it is that we're trying to do too much. So, I mean, the county frequently violates the Permit Streamlining Act that the state has, that says you have to get back to people in 30 to 45 days, and no one can hold them accountable. There's not even a citizen review board that you can go complain to. I mean, technically they exist, but it is the Board of Supervisors, which is not a good relationship. Oftentimes they just take staff's recommendation. So, how do we streamline the process when we're short on resources? Let's look to what other counties that just don't have these resources do. So, for example, in Montana, the state of Montana is actually responsible for reviewing plans in a lot of the more rural counties. And what they do is say, well, if you have the sign off from a licensed professional on, plumbing, electric, structural engineering, then that's good enough for us, because they're accepting the liability. And so if we allow more private plan check and, let these professionals put their licenses on the line, they're already doing that, then really having a county plan check with an undetermined length of time is really an expense that, we can't afford. And maybe it's not necessary. Let's see if we can just reduce it to what's absolutely necessary and focus on that. And otherwise, let people who are licensed in this industry do the work. And I think that's going to be really necessary now, of course, as we look at how are nearly 1,000 homes going to be rebuilt quickly. The county doesn't have the ability to review all those applications in an expeditious manner. We have to let the community do the work and maybe peer review those plans. So again, it comes down to ways that we can help bring more hands to the problem, and the county acting as more of an organizer than trying to do everything itself.
Great answer. Thanks for answering my question. I think you brought up a good point that we should discuss during your next town hall is that those new homes are all going to have to be built under solar. So we're definitely need the resources or change the way we're doing things here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and thank you for your work in the renewable energy industry. So it's very needed. And I'm hoping our HOA here decides to put in solar soon. I'm working on that right now.
All right, Beck has a question and he was going to ask it himself, so I'll let him go right ahead.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Beck.
So Manu, it's probably not an easy question to answer, and I'm drilling down on the homelessness issue.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe some of this will be addressed during the panel discussion tomorrow.
Yeah.
So during a podcast in November, you were asked this question, and your first response was it involved, you mentioned Reagan, and you discussed something about possibility of building facilities, you talked about mental illness and a few other things. But today it seems like your answer is housing first, possibly some work programs.
Mm-hmm.
Your website definitely lists housing first as an answer.
Mm-hmm.
Has your position changed since November?
No, absolutely not. So, and this is a great question, Beck. I wouldn't say that it's changed, but I think I've looked for more ways to implement, housing solutions in the short term, right? And so, where my head's at today is let's provide, let's house the 50 most. The 50 individuals that are whatever at greatest risk, have the greatest mental health needs. Let's just reduce the problem to that size and see how we help them as quickly as possible. And I think the answer would be we would have to use county property. I mean, I think the Emmeline complex is actually a great location where we could put some pallet homes or tiny homes for intermediate housing. And ultimately, as we look at the kind of environment where people suffering from severe mental illness might do well in the long term, it might be an intentional community in a more rural location. It's going to take maybe a little bit more time to create that, but I also want to see how we can address the issue now, and putting people close to health services at a county facility we already have on land that we own, with a pallet shelter that could be delivered in a week, I think is a pretty good place to start. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that answers my question. The only thing I'll say about that is that I know that people don't believe we have the resources or the money, but I personally don't think that's true, because if you look at like Santa Clara, they did a study a few years ago about the cost of chronic homelessness. Yeah, it's enormous. It could be as high as $1 million per person per year for some individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And to say that we don't have the money is just wrong-headed. So
I completely agree with you. I think one obvious example is in obviously in the way that we spend money on law enforcement today. I'm not sure I agree with the phrase defund the police. I don't want to destabilize security and law enforcement in our community, but I do think that there's opportunities to transition more resources to prevention of dealing with those issues. And when I went on a ride along with the sheriff deputies, we were spending 50 to 75% of the day dealing with people who had addiction issues, mental health issues, and other communities have shown that it's really much more effective if you have a mental health outreach team or health crisis unit that can do that outreach. And then, the other thing that was crazy is we'd be there working, the sheriff only tool really seemed to be issuing a citation to people. And, these folks would say, well, where the heck am I supposed to go? Where do you want me to go? The shelters are full. And the deputies didn't have an answer for me. And so you know, now that person, what if they get a citation? What if they get arrested? You know, now we're going to spend money as a county on legal fees between the district attorney and public defender. You know, the DA's office is a $23 million budget a year. The public defender is $13 million. So we spend, you're absolutely right, we spend tons of money in all these different ways. If we just gave someone a home, a roof over their head, a place to lock up their stuff, a lot of folks we could begin to transition to a more stable situation and use the resources in our community a lot more efficiently.
Okay, so then I had one other question. Thanks for that one. So you know, your incumbent, the county, I don't know how to put this, but the county outsources a lot of stuff to nonprofits.
Yeah.
Your incumbent has deep pockets.
Okay. Yeah.
There's a lot of people who are invested in, you know, in keeping him in office.
Mm-hmm.
How do you go up against, you know, that kind of money interest?
I mean, that's a great question. You know, many people don't realize that, you know, when my opponent first ran back in 2008, he had, like right towards the end of the campaign, the SEIU, which is the local unions, or rather Service Workers International Union, spent $60,000 of independent expenditures, you know, right at the end of the campaign, and really tilted it in his favor pretty significantly. So yeah, that kind of money can have a big impact on a campaign. And when, you know, to put it in perspective, a supervisor's race is generally around $100,000. So 60,000 is a huge amount. You know, I think ultimately how you compete against it is with just you know, first of all, just a good grassroots organization. And I think we're starting from a good place. If you look at how I did in the primary, right? I mean, the reason we're going to a runoff is because the majority of folks already didn't vote for the incumbent. So they voted for somebody new, right? And the next three candidates after me all have endorsed me. And so collectively, if you add up our percentages from the primary, that's 51.2%. That's a great place to start. And I think that thanks to the work of a lot of volunteers and just folks like Christina, I mean, I'm just blown away every day by the amount of hard work people are putting into this campaign. It's really inspiring that you know, this is an opportunity for change in our community, and I think that's how we're going to win. Is a lot of people working really hard and doing outreach in their neighborhoods.
You know, thank you for that answer. You know, I'm definitely, as you can tell, I'd like to see change. And I just want to comment, you know, a lot of people keep bombarding you with this experience thing. And I think it's a good question, and, you know, you should be able to answer it. But on the other hand, there's a reason why a lot of offices have term limits.
Mm-hmm.
And so experience isn't necessarily, you know, 12 years of experience isn't necessarily a good thing. So, and all the supervisors at one point had no experience. So, you know, I mean, how does someone become a supervisor if they're gonna, you know, if they got to be one first? I mean, that's not possible. So
Right.
I think it's a little bit unfair that, you know, that you're getting that over and over again. So, but yeah, I'll just leave it with that.
I'll have it over again. That's a great question, Beck. And yeah, you know, I think again, as I said, you know, if you look at the org chart for the county, it's the electorate on top, then the supervisors, and then county staff. And I think the danger of someone being in the position for too long is that they start to think they know everything, and that maybe they develop relationships with staff and just kind of take their word for it more than they should. And I think it is really important for our democracy to refresh that link between the electorate and the supervisor, and make sure that, you know, you as voters have someone in there who, you know, is representing your interests, and who has that fresh perspective, that same perspective that you have, representing you and managing, you know, almost $1 billion organization, right? And the county's $870 million budget. So yeah, I think that's what you deserve, and that's why I'm running.
Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you, Beck. It's 7:18. Two more questions. I'm happy to stay here. I'll stay all night. Sure.
I need to check in with Greg. Greg, I know you're on mute right now. Greg sent in a question earlier on email, which I just saw a little bit ago. It is similar to some of the questions people asked earlier about Mountain Road, so I'm going to read it again. And it says, we live up in the mountains and represent few voters and a modest tax base. Sadly, historically, this seems to be reflected in the attention given to maintaining our roads, which are literally carpets of patches and potholes. And he's asking for your comments. So that we should just recognize that he asked that, and you can add a few more comments.
Sure. Greg, did you want to, I answered this fairly extensively earlier, but, happy to address it again. I think it comes down to, we do have to spend more of our funds on primary infrastructure like this, like our roads, especially when it comes to ensuring safe evacuation routes and managing for fire. And so I think more primary dollars on it. Those will be, in many cases, matched by state and federal funds to make our money go further. And then we also need to find ways to get more volunteers on the problem, with training programs to help people who want to fix their own road, quick reimbursement for people. In the same way we have volunteer firefighters, let's make sure we have volunteer road brigades as well. And then, finally, as I said, work programs are a major factor in helping people recovering from homelessness. And I think if we can create programs that are dedicated to fixing roads as well, while the county is providing a place for people to sleep and food, that could be a way that we're actually taking social services dollars and translating them into better roads.
All right, thank you. And then it was Karina and Ryan who had the final question for tonight. So Karina was going to ask that herself.
Hey, Karina.
Let's see, I unmuted her.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're here and we're under construction, running back and forth. Yeah, so I knew that my friend Linda had asked something quite similar to me. I want to just say it verbatim because this is what she said. Could you speak to the politics required to work with other supervisors to press for successful progressive policies and leadership?
Yeah, I think, my strategy for working with the other supervisors is really going to be a couple things. I mentioned trying to take more initiative, and we've really just got to set the agenda to a certain extent, right? If you don't proactively propose things, they're just never going to happen. Staff will serve up things to vote on all day long, but it might not be the things that we need to address. So I'll take more initiative. And then as far as making sure there's a sense of urgency, I really plan on drawing on my experience working with you as voters to ensure that that's never far away. So whether it's going back to a representative poll in the county on any given issue, whether it's forming a citizen council on an issue of randomly selected people, so that again it's representative of our community and a direct voice for democracy. Whether it's making sure that the important issues that we're voting on as supervisors are addressed after 6 p.m. So that people can attend the meetings, right? Today, they're all at 9 a.m. in the morning and many people can't make it. So, a lot of folks have asked for those important votes to be moved to the evening. I will look at every way possible to make sure that you are more involved in the conversation, because ultimately that's the leverage that I'm going to need working with the other supervisors to make sure we get these things done.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Great question. Okay, well, thank you, everyone who's stuck with us here to the end. I'm so grateful to all of you for turning out here on a Wednesday evening. It's and wanting to be involved in our local democracy. This is really where the essential work happens. I think to refresh our democracy as a whole, it's going to start in Zoom meetings just like this one. So I applaud you all for coming out, and you can get in touch with me if you have more questions or information you want to share through my website, manukoenig.com. You can email me at manuforsupervisor@gmail.com, and you can keep up with the campaign either by subscribing to the newsletter on the website or by following Manu for Supervisor on Facebook or on Instagram.
And can I mention one more thing?
Sure.
So in case you guys don't have any plans for tomorrow night, we're having a panel, and it's going to be on mental health and homelessness. And if you go to Manu's website and go to the events tab, you can register for the event there. So just wanted to make a mention of it. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Much needed. Yeah, it'll be really exciting. I had a chance to check in with some of the panelists yesterday. They're super smart and can talk about great programs that they're implementing elsewhere. So yeah, join us tomorrow if you have time.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for being here tonight. I
Yeah.
know we just had someone join, but we actually joined at the end of the session, but we will be posting this recording. We'll have it out there.
Great. Thank you. Good
All
night.
right. Bye-bye.